Alright. Listen, man. I was not planning to cover this today, but y'all done sent me this clip about 900 times. Because why is 50 Cent online once again doing what he does best? Trolling. And this time it's Diddy's son, Christian King Combs, and the crowd went dead silent on him. Nah, let's get into this one because this ain't just a performance moment. This is years of beef bubbling over. So Christian Combs is on stage, right? He's performing, crowd vibing a little bit. Then he tries to do the classic bad boy chant. You know, bad boy, bad boy. And the crowd said nothing.
On this next song right here, I need y'all help. Y'all ready? Yeah, good. And yo, when I say bad, y'all say boy. Bad, bad. When I say bad, y'all say boy. Bad.
Stop scrolling, because this moment had the entire crowd malfunctioning in real time. 1 second, the lights were on, the music was ready, and expectations were high. The next second, dead silence, awkward energy, and King Combs standing in front of a crowd that didn't just boo him, they froze him out. No cheers, no hype. Just that uncomfortable pause that hits harder than any insult. And somewhere watching this unfold, 50 Cent reportedly couldn't believe what he was seeing. This wasn't a normal performance gone wrong. This was the kind of public moment that feels like a secret getting exposed without anyone saying a word. The crowd didn't throw bottles. They didn't riot. They did something worse. They withheld energy. And if you know anything about hip-hop culture, you know silence is louder than hate. Phones went up instantly. Clips hit the timeline before the echoes faded. Fans started asking brutal questions. Critics sharpened their jokes, and comparisons started flying faster than facts. People were saying this looked like a career checkpoint nobody prepares for, the kind that separates legacy from entitlement. Some even joked this made award show snubs look polite, because when a crowd freezes instead of reacting, it's not just a bad night, it's a message. And judging by the internet's reaction, that message was heard loud and clear. The moment didn't need commentary to feel heavy. It announced itself with absence. No roar, no bounce. Just a crowd staring back like someone had hit mute on the room. King Combs stepped into the spotlight expecting momentum, and instead walked straight into a wall of nothing. Not boos at first, those came later, but that chilling pause that sucks the oxygen out of a venue. In hip-hop, silence isn't neutral. Silence is judgment wearing a straight face. This wasn't some dusty bar gig where bad sound eats performances alive. This was a real crowd, real phones out, real expectations. And when the beat dropped, the energy didn't. People didn't sway. They didn't lean in. They froze. It looked less like a concert and more like an awkward family dinner where someone brings up politics. That's when the murmurs started. Then the boos crept in like a delayed reaction. Nobody wanted to own Dot to understand why this hit so hard. You've got to understand the weight of the name. King Combs isn't just another artist grinding through open mics. He carries a legacy that arrives before he does. Expectations ride shotgun. Comparisons sit in the front row. Every move is measured against a shadow so large it blocks the stage. Lights? Fair or not, that's the reality. And that night, the crowd didn't care about fairness. They cared about feeling something. They felt nothing. The first reactions online were confused disbelief. Is the audio messed up? Is this clip edited? Why is nobody moving? People replayed the footage like they were checking for a glitch, but there was no glitch. The silence was real, and it spread. You could see it in the body language, shoulders stiff, eyes scanning, performers waiting for a cue that never came. When boos finally broke through, they didn't feel angry. They felt awkward, like the crowd was embarrassed on everyone's behalf. And then came the whispers about 50 Cent. Because whenever there's a high-profile stumble tied to legacy, his name floats into the room like a smoke alarm. Reportedly, watching the clip, he couldn't believe it. Not shocked in a dramatic way, more like that incredulous head shake that says, I've seen this movie before. If there's anyone who understands crowds, pressure, and the brutal honesty of live rooms, it's him. This wasn't just a bad night. This was a lesson playing out in public. The sarcasm online didn't wait. Jokes flew, comparing the moment to a talent show audition where the judges forget to clap. Others said it looked like the crowd was buffering. People laughed. But it was nervous laughter, the kind you do when something uncomfortable happens and humor feels safer than empathy. Memes cropped up within minutes, freezing frames of the silence with captions that cut deep. Silence became the punchline. And that's when you know a moment has crossed into culture. What made this sting worse was the timing. The industry is in a weird place right now. Audiences are picky, impatient, and allergic to anything that smells like entitlement. They want hunger. They want authenticity. They want to feel like you need the crowd as much as the crowd needs you. When they don't feel that exchange, they pull back. And pulling back is exactly what happened here. The freeze wasn't personal. It was transactional. The crowd didn't get what it came for, so it withheld approval. Early defenders rushed in, saying crowds can be unpredictable, that not every room reflects reality. All true, but the internet isn't a court of law. It's a vibe check machine, and the vibe failed publicly. Others argued that legacy pressure is unfair, that comparisons are toxic, that nobody should be judged off one clip. Also true. But the clip existed. And once a clip exists, it becomes the story whether anyone likes it or not. Then the narrative shifted from performance to perception. People started asking if this was about music at all. Was the crowd reacting to the sound? Or to the story surrounding the name? Was this resistance to talent or resentment toward privilege? Those questions don't have clean answers, but they don't need them to trend. They just need tension. And tension was everywhere. The crowd freeze became symbolic overnight. Not just a bad reaction, but a referendum on legacy acts, on inherited spotlight, on whether audiences are done being patient with names that don't earn their cheers the hard way. Comment sections filled with debates that went way beyond the stage. People argued about grind versus gatekeeping, opportunity versus obligation, respect versus results. The performance became a mirror, and everyone saw something different in it. Meanwhile, clips multiplied. Different angles, different edits, each one framing the silence a little differently. Some emphasized the pause before the boos. Others zoomed in on faces in the crowd, searching for clues like it was a true crime special. The internet doesn't just watch moments. It dissects them. And the more it dissected, the more uncomfortable the autopsy became. What really locked this in was the lack of immediate rescue. No sudden chant. No late surge of applause. No DJ saving the moment. The freeze held. And in live performance momentum. Is everything, once it's gone, you're wrestling gravity? That night, gravity won. The boos didn't dominate, but the silence did. And silence has a way of sticking to reputations like glue dot by the end of the first wave. This wasn't just about one artist on one stage. It was about what crowds are willing to give and what they refuse to fake. It was about the difference between attention and approval. And it was about a name learning in real time that legacy opens doors, but it doesn't move rooms. The internet wasn't done. It had only just warmed up. Because once a freeze goes viral, the thaw never comes. Quietly dawed if part one was the freeze. This is where the internet turned it into an ice age. Because once the clips escaped the venue and hit the timeline, the moment didn't just live, it multiplied. Different angles, different edits, different captions screaming different agendas. One clip made it look like total rejection. Another framed it as awkward hesitation. A third slowed the silence down like it was a crime scene, daring viewers to blink. Context didn't stand a chance. Virality had already taken the wheel. Reaction channels went feral. You could practically hear the upload buttons crying for mercy. Thumbnails popped up with faces locked in cartoon shock, mouths open like they'd just seen a ghost. Titles leaned into drama like it was a contact sport. Everyone claimed to be just analyzing, while clearly enjoying the chaos like it was front row seating at a public trial. Commentary piled on commentary, and suddenly, people were reacting to reactions of reactions. The internet loves a feedback loop, especially when it smells blood. Then came the memes, and they were ruthless. Silence, jokes everywhere. Comparisons to award shows where the clapping track breaks. Captions saying the crowd hit him with the parent-teacher meeting pause. People joked that the room went so quiet you could hear career expectations cracking. It was funny in that dark, uncomfortable way where laughter feels like a defense mechanism. Because watching someone get iced out publicly hits a nerve even when you pretend it DOESN single quotes T. Pop culture comparisons went wild. Some said it felt like a reality show elimination where the host pauses too long before reading the name. Others compared it to those viral talent show clips where the judges stare at each other like, "Are we allowed to clap?" A few even joked this made infamous. Award show snubs looked generous. The comparisons weren't fair, but they were effective. They framed the moment as bigger than a performance, like a symbol of the industry's patience running out. And then, right on cue, the 50 Cent factor hovered over the discourse like a narrator nobody asked for but everybody expected.
His name
Kept getting dragged into the conversation, not because he had to say anything, but because people assumed what he would say. Memes imagined his reaction. Captions joked about him watching the clip with that signature smirk, thinking, yeah, I've seen this before. In hip-hop culture, that unspoken reaction carries weight. Experience doesn't need to tweet to be felt. Celebrity-adjacent responses added more fuel without adding clarity. Not statements. Never statements. Just likes, reposts, vague captions about earning it, and crowds don't lie. Fans connected dots that may or may not exist, but once dots are connected enough times, they become lines in the public imagination. Silence from some was interpreted as agreement. Noise from others was seen as opportunism. Nobody escaped interpretation. Public outrage didn't look like anger this time. It looked like debate. People arguing about whether audiences are too harsh, whether legacy kids are held to impossible standards, whether the internet roots for failure more than success. That debate split timelines clean down the middle. One side said this was cruel, a moment blown out of proportion. The other side said this is exactly how the culture self-corrects. Both sides spoke with conviction, and neither side listened. What really escalated the tension was how fast the conversation drifted from music to morality. Was this about talent or entitlement? Was the freeze a response to sound or to story? People started pulling up past interviews, past moments, past optics, building narratives that felt airtight because they wanted them to be. The performance became evidence in a larger argument about who deserves space and who's just occupying it. The internet also did what it always does next. It demanded a response. Not politely, aggressively. People wanted a statement, a clapback, a redemption clip something. When nothing came immediately, the silence off stage mirrored the silence on stage, and that symmetry drove people insane. In the absence of response, speculation filled the gap like it always does, louder and less accurate with every retelling. Defenders tried to slow the spiral. They reminded everyone that crowds can be fickle, that one moment doesn't define a career, that many legends have. Bombed rooms before finding their footing. All valid points, all drowned out by the algorithm. Because growth arcs don't trend as well as collapses. Redemption takes time. Virality wants immediacy. The tone began to change as days passed. The jokes didn't stop, but they sharpened. Less playful, more pointed. People weren't just laughing anymore, they were assessing. The crowd freeze became shorthand in arguments, a reference point people used to make broader claims about the industry. It stopped being a clip and started being a symbol dot, and that's when it became clear this wasn't a passing moment. It had crossed into narrative territory, the kind that follows artists into interviews, into comment sections, into rooms they haven't entered yet. The freeze wasn't just something that happened. It was something people would bring up again, and again, and again. By the time this phase peaked, the internet wasn't asking whether the crowd froze. That was settled. It was asking what the freeze meant. And meaning is dangerous because it sticks longer than facts. The stage went quiet for a few seconds, but the conversation? That was just getting started. This is where the laughter fades. And the wait sets in. Not the viral weight that trends for a weekend, but the kind that presses down slowly and reshapes how a name is heard when it's announced. Because after the freeze, after the memes, after the reaction economy squeezed, every drop out of the clip, the aftermath didn't explode. It settled. And settling is dangerous, because that's where reputations quietly change. Public perception shifted first, and it did so without needing another clip. The story had already written itself in people's minds. King Combs wasn't just the guy who had a quiet crowd anymore. He became shorthand for a larger conversation about legacy, entitlement, and whether audiences are done giving grace to names that arrive pre-lit. That framing wasn't fair, but it was sticky. And sticky narratives don't need proof to travel. They just need repetition. The silence from King Combs afterward became its own chapter. No immediate clapback, no dramatic denial, no redemption. Performance rushed out to drown the clip. For some, that restraint read as maturity. For others, it felt like hesitation. And in internet culture, hesitation gets interpreted as uncertainty. People don't ask why someone is quiet. They decide. What the quiet means for them. Industry whispers followed, because they always do. Not loud statements, but subtle shifts. Less excitement in conversations, more cautious phrasing. The kind of changes you don't see on camera, but feel in how people talk around you. The freeze didn't cancel anything, but it recalibrated expectations. Suddenly, future performances weren't just performances. They were tests. Can he move a room? Can he win energy instead of inheriting attention? Those questions don't leave easily once they're asked. The comparison machine didn't shut off either. People started lining up examples of artists who had to earn respect the hard way, contrasting them with moments of perceived privilege. Some comparisons were thoughtful. Others were lazy. All of them contributed to a narrative that put King Combs in a defensive position he didn't ask for but now had to navigate. Once the internet assigns you a role, escaping it takes consistency. Not explanation. And then there was the shadow of 50 Cent hovering over the whole thing. Not because he said anything definitive, but because his career represents the opposite. Arc, earned momentum, relentless crowd work. A history of rooms that either loved you or made you better. The unspoken contrast did more damage than any quote could have. Experience doesn't need to comment to be loud. The crowd itself became part of the legacy discussion. People debated whether audiences have become harsher, more impatient, less forgiving. Some argued that social media has trained crowds to wait for virality instead of feeling the moment. Others said the freeze was honesty, not cruelty. That debate mattered because it reframed the event as a cultural signal, not just an individual stumble. When moments get framed that way, they stop belonging to the person on stage. What lingered most was the idea of energy as currency. In hip-hop, the exchange between artist and crowd is sacred. You give, they give back. When that exchange stalls, it doesn't just embarrass, it questions value. The freeze didn't say, "You're bad." It said, "You haven't convinced us yet." And that's a harder critique to outrun. As time passed, the joke softened. But the reference stuck. The freeze became a line people used casually, a shorthand in debates about legacy kids, about industry shortcuts, about whether names should come with expectations or opportunities. It turned into cultural shorthand, which is how moments become permanent. There were also quieter consequences. Fans who had been casual became more critical. Critics became more confident. Neutral observers became watchers, waiting to see what the next performance would look like. Every appearance after this moment would be viewed through a different lens, whether anyone admitted it or not. That's how perception works. It doesn't reset. It layers. The irony is that moments like this often decide careers not by ending them, but by forcing direction. Some artists shrink under that pressure. Others grow teeth. The freeze didn't close doors. It made them heavier. And heavy doors require force, not expectation. To open. By the end of this phase, the story wasn't about embarrassment anymore. It was about response. Not a tweet, not a statement, but a pattern. How do you show up next? How do you command energy instead of waiting for it? Those answers don't come in one night. They come over time, in rooms that don't care about your last name, And that's where the tension still lives. Not in what happened, but in what follows. Because the internet doesn't remember redemption until it sees it. It bookmarks failure and waits. The crowd froze for a few seconds. The conversation froze expectations. And now everything after has to move differently. And this is where the conversation turns toward you. Because pretending this moment didn't shift something would be pure denial. Crowd freezes don't happen by accident, and they definitely don't go viral for no reason. The real question isn't whether the silence was awkward, it's what it meant. Was this the crowd being brutally honest, or the internet projecting its own insecurities onto one uncomfortable moment? So let's hear it. Was King Combs judged unfairly because of the weight of his last name, or was this a reality check that every artist has to face eventually? Did the crowd freeze because they weren't feeling the music, or because the narrative walked on stage before he did? Drop your take in the comments, because this debate isn't going anywhere quietly. If this breakdown made you pause, rewind, or mutter, "Nah, that silence was loud," smash that like button like it owes you money and just tried to duck you. And if you want no-filter breakdowns when culture shifts in real time, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. Over here, we don't wait for PR statements. We read the room while it's still cold. Moments like this don't disappear. They resurface in interviews, in think pieces, and in every future performance where the crowd decides whether to lean in or lean back. And when the next chapter drops, whether it's redemption, resistance, or another surprise, you already know exactly where it's getting dissected first, because this channel doesn't chase headlines. Headlines chase moments, and moments land right here. Stay locked in, stay sharp, and keep your notifications on. The silence spoke. The internet listened. And the story? It's far from finished. Fame Blue.